Hey everybody, it's Bob Crossan, Senior Managing Editor from Water and Waste Digest again. And throughout the rest of the year, we will be featuring our top projects for 2020. So today I have with me Gregory Levasseur. He is Senior Associate Wastewater Engineer at H2M. And I also have Paul Pontieri. He is the Village of Patchogue Mayor. And we're going to talk about the Main Street Sewer Rehab and the Village of Patchogue. So thank you both for being on the call. I appreciate you taking the time to do this today.
Thank you.
So I'll start with you, Paul. Could you tell me a little bit more about the Village of Patchogue, some of the context on this project? What's kind of the population size of the village, and what type of growth have you guys seen over time?
Village of Patchogue was incorporated in 1893. The sewer system that we're talking about here was actually started in 1907, and it was a gravity one. It was probably flush and run, run it right out to the bay. We're a waterfront community. The sewer, it's a small sewer district to start out with. We've expanded it over the years, but it is the primary reason for our growth. We're 12,500 people in 2.2 square miles. We're a relatively small village, but densely populated. I always say Patchogue is this little urban center in the middle of a big suburban sprawl. And our growth and our stability, I think, when you look back, in my case, I've been there for 16 years. In the last 16 years, we've had probably $600 million worth of new construction. And a lot of that is driven by having our own wastewater treatment plant and our own system and control over that own system. It's not controlled by the county, it's not controlled by the state, it's controlled by the Village of Patchogue. So it is a critical piece of our growth. But like I said, we're a 100-year-old incorporated village and probably the better part of 200-and-something-year-old community unto itself. So when you look back and you look at growth over time, once the sewer system came into place, the growth has been pretty consistent.
Yeah. So what about kind of like the local culture of your village? I imagine with the bay and everything, you guys have a pretty vibrant like Main Street
We do.
area.
Well, when you go back and if you go back 50 years, go back to 1960, 1950, 1940, the village had a Penny's, it had a Woolworths, it had a W.T. Grant's, it had 2 large department stores, it had furriers and men's stores, and it was the mall of its time on the South Shore. We're about 60 miles outside of Manhattan. And there was Patchogue, Bayshore, and Riverhead. And these were the 3 large shopping areas. Those large shopping areas, when I was growing up, we had 3 movie theaters. It was just a vibrant retail center, And malls came along in the 70s, 60s, and 70s as they did across the country. And it really began to strangle the downtowns. And by the end of the 80s or the mid 80s, the movie theaters were closed up, and downtown was starting to really feel the pressures. And in the 80s and 90s, the dynamic of the downtown changed, and we had 1 department store left, and it had been here for 100 years, and that then closed at the end of about 99, 2000. So what had been this vibrant retail setting now became basically, we had a parking problem because we had too many empty parking spaces. We're wrestling with how do we become something different and go forward. I had sat on the village board as a trustee from 86 to 94, then lost an election, sat out for a while, and decided to get back involved in the early 2000s, became mayor in 2004. But one of the things I clearly knew at that point is that we need to change the dynamics of the village. We need to change who we are. We have the mayor in 96 to 2000 took a movie theater and turned it into a performing arts center. An 1,100 seat theater was restored to its original grandeur. with the chandeliers and the gold trim and all of those other things that you saw in the big Broadway theaters. Now it's 1,100 seats. So my sense was is we needed to take that and build it into, we needed a dance part. We got it brought in art space. Art space is affordable housing for artists out of Minneapolis. They got about 65 or 70 of them around the country. But that doesn't happen without the sewer plant, without that kind of high density housing. Then we moved on and we built in the middle of our downtown a five-story, 291 unit apartment complex with 40,000 square feet of retail. And there was to be retail. Now it's primarily restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And we went from a place that had 2 restaurants to today we have better than 35 or 40 restaurants if you extend out. All of that growth. And I keep coming back to the wastewater treatment plant because one of the neighboring communities has a golf course. We have a sewer plant. Give me a sewer plant. People stop playing golf. So the sewer itself is what, for us, has created the energy itself. So we had dynamic changes from a retail setting to pretty much being almost vacant on Main Street, 50% by square footage. We were vacant, 22 to 25% by the storefront vacancies, to now take away the pandemic. That's created issues that we have to wrestle with.
Mm-hmm.
But now, in the good times, 4 or 5% vacancies, and most of those small spaces, not large spaces. So it has been a turn, and the community has been very accepting of it.
Yeah. So
and one other piece, just as an aside to that, in 2004, and in Suffolk County, the average age is 42. In the last 16 years, it's dropped down in Patchogue to 35, 36. So it's also brought in a younger population by having the dynamic arts and entertainment center that we've created.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, like that total shift, Greg, maybe you can talk a little bit more about this. That kind of a shift, especially to restaurants and stuff from retail, creates a totally different wastewater structure that you have to deal
Yes,
with,
it
and
is.
the capacity. I'm sure the capacity is one of the reasons why this project needed to be done. Could you talk a little bit more about the concerns that people had in that area? I understand that there were some backups and stuff like that. So some of the business owners in that area weren't too thrilled with the current status of things.
No, so if you look, like Paul said, the sewer system was installed in 1908. The first treatment plant was rated for 300,000 gallons a day. In the 1980s, it was increased in capacity up to 500,000 gallons. And then in 2011, they went up to 800,000 gallons. Currently, the village is putting a feasibility study planning report together to increase it to 1.2 MGD. So with all these upgrades, the trunk line to the treatment plant never increased from the original 12 and 10-inch size sewer down Main Street that was installed in 1907. So we did a hydraulic capacity analysis, did a clean and TV study. All the pipe was old clay pipe from 1907. So there's a lot of fractures and cracks in the pipe. So when we went through and we saw where the backups were happening, there was collapsed pipes, partially collapsed pipes, water services going through pipes, gas services going through the mainline sewer from, repairs on the other utility mains. So when you looked at the pump stations that were pumping into the Main Street sewer trunk line, were causing surcharge conditions and backing up into the restaurants, grease traps, and basements, and causing, major damage.
Yeah. So how did you guys go about expanding that capacity? I understand there was a considerable amount of linear feet of pipe involved here. Could you talk a little bit more about the project itself and kind of what was done to try and alleviate this issue?
So we started looking at the downtown area and how the growth has been going. And right now, only about 35% of the downtown area is built out to the zoning capacity. So the zoning capacity downtown's for 3-floor buildings with restaurants on the bottom floor and residential on top. So when we looked at it, we looked at adding 1.1 gallon per square foot of area per building per flow. So we took the influence sewer coming into the plant is a 24-inch ductile iron sewer that can handle 2 MGD coming down the pike, average daily flow. And as it went up down Main Street and branched out, we increased the 10-inch clay pipe up to 16-inch DR18. This provides plenty of capacity and for future expansion into the village and out-of-district connections, which the village has been accepting with their sewage treatment plant.
Yeah. So some of the primary challenges here included dewatering and traffic control. Could you talk a little bit about the dewatering aspect? I understand there's pump bypasses used here because you had to keep sewer service live, right? Could you
Yeah,
just
sewer was done live. So with the dewatering, originally the project was planned to go out in October. We had some hiccups with the dewatering permit and getting it through the DEC with groundwater samples and everything. So it ended up being a project that was started in January and February. So when we started going through this project, the dewatering was being done at night and the bypass pumping during low flow conditions. It just, with the cold winter months and the wind down on the bay, it was freezing all the pumps and the equipment. So we worked with the village. They allowed us to transition the construction to daytime so that we could get some of the warmth from the sun during the day, which allowed us to continue our bypass pumping and our dewatering, and the operations went smooth from there. As we kind of got off the side streets up to Main Street, we started moving into March, in the time period of March. This is when we were supposed to be doing night work on Main Street as well, and it turned into day work with the COVID-19. What happened is all the businesses were shut down, all the doors were closed. We were able to shut down all of Main Street to accelerate this project and get it done under budget and on time. By doing that, we were able to close the whole road. The bypass pumping was minimal because none of the businesses were open. So no stores were occupied. We weren't fighting with parking. We weren't fighting with traffic. So it really minimized our traffic plan, and we were able to, instead of tickering traffic one way down Main Street, we were able to bypass all traffic around Main Street with nobody on the roads during the pandemic through March and April. And then we finished up the project right before Memorial Day.
Awesome. So, but prior to that, there was some traffic control there. I'm curious, Paul, did you have any people approach you about the traffic control or any concerns with things in that area? As like, I know that businesses, they always like to have cars being able to go by and traffic being able to go by, even just pedestrians. Could you speak a little bit to that from the business element there?
Yeah, at the beginning when they first were coming out of what's called Hammond Street up to Main Street, and that's back where the sewer plant is. There's a little restaurant on the corner there that the owner I know well, and he was on the phone with me every other day. And I finally said to him, I said, John, you guys want to blame us for this? I said, if we didn't have so many restaurants on Main Street, I wouldn't have to expand the pipe and you'd still be open. I said, so we're a product of our own success. And I think, and he understood that. And the businesses, they're a little bit of complaints, but they also understood. And not to say there's any advantage to having a pandemic, but we had to have one at the point we had it. It worked out well, as Craig said, because we were able to do everything during the day. Most of the retail places were closed. Well, all the retail places. The restaurants were just very barely open. So, and the amount of traffic that was on the road overall had decreased by a great numbers. So in its own bizarre way, I can say that there was one minor advantage to it, if there was any at all, to the pandemic, is that it did allow this project to go probably a lot faster, like Greg said. And most things that we've done with H2M in charge have come on time, and a lot of times earlier than and under budget. So this one was no exception to that rule. We had some help with the unfortunate circumstances we were in.
Yeah. So how are businesses faring now? I'm not sure of the actual phase that you guys are in New York. Are they open to business now? And have you been able to see kind of how this project has shifted the sewerage system there?
In terms of that piece, Greg can answer that. But on Main Street, the restaurants now they're at 50% occupancy inside and controlled occupancy on the outside based upon a 6-foot distance between and the other controls that the government has put in place. And most of them are still surviving. We haven't had any restaurants close, but we've had one or two dry goods close.
Mhm.
So we're surviving okay, but November is going to tell the tale when it gets cold again.
Mhm.
But as far as how the system works, I think that's a great answer. It seems to me to be whatever's on Main Street is going someplace and ending up somehow.
The sewers on Main Street with the going for a larger diameter pipe. We dewatered a little bit more to lower it into the ground so that we weren't surcharging the businesses. And with the 16-inch pipe, the slope, we were able to reduce the slope a little bit to keep it and maintain it at a lower depth that allowed these businesses to connect from the top of the pipe, not the sidewall of the pipe. A lot of the old connections were directly into the tap directly into the side of the pipe. So now that we have proper pitch on the pipe and proper pitch back to the property line, we ran all new laterals to the curb line, so they have all brand new pipe, so that if there's any breaks in the future, they're all outside the roadway pavement area and in the sidewalk area.
Mhm.
So as of now, there's been no backups to report, and we've been able to increase the speed of the pumps for all the ancillary pump stations to handle additional flows.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys both for being able to do this call with me, and congratulations also on the top project award for the year. I appreciate all the time that you guys have put into this and for giving us such a great story to tell our audience.